Hey everyone, in this video we are going to talk about nested loops and conditionals. When we use loops inside loops and conditionals inside conditionals, this is called nesting. So let's see a few examples so we can understand how it works. So let's suppose our page receives two pieces of information about a person, her age and membership status, which can be member or not a member. Then we need to show the price of a product based on the following rules. So for members, the product is free, and for all people above 65 years old, the product is also free. Then we have non-members under 18 years old, for which the price is going to be 6, and we have non-members above 18, which the price is going to be 12. So how can we solve this using a little bit of logic and using nested conditionals? So let's just copy the first two lines to Visual Studio Code. So let's start an if statement. And now we can test two conditions at the same time. So if the person is a member, now we know that we can evaluate this. We don't need to type is member equals true. We can just type is member, or the age is greater than or equal to 65. If one of these conditions are true, then we know that the product is free. So console.log free. If you're tired of sending stuff to the console, don't worry. We're gonna start interacting with our HTML elements. In fact, in the next exercise, you have opportunities to do this already. So let's do this just for a little while more. So now, in case of the else, now we still need to do another test. Because if we enter in the else statement, it means that the person is not a member and the person is not above 65. But now we still have two different prices for above 18 and below 18. So here we're going to have to start another conditional, which is going to be nested inside this other conditional. So here we just start another one. So if age is below 18, then we know that the price is 6. Otherwise, the price is going to be 12. So in some situations, we are going to have multiple levels of if statements, not only two, but this is for another time. So let's save this. In this case, the person is not a member and is 25 years old, so the price should be 12. So let's make a few tests. So the price is 12. Now let's try 25, but let's say the person is a member. So the product is free. Now let's go back. The person is not a member, but the person is 70 years old, which should be free again. That's correct. And now the person is not a member and the person is 12 years old. And now the price is 6. So we just solved this problem using nested conditionals. Now, just one thing to pay attention is that sometimes we can replace the nested conditionals by using the and or operator, and sometimes we just don't need them at all. So I'm going to show why in this case we didn't have to do this. So I just wanted to show you an example of how it works, but in fact, we didn't need to do this. So let's go back to the code and understand why. So if this condition is true, which means either this is true or this is true, because we are using the OR operator, this is going to be executed. And if this is executed, JavaScript is just going to ignore all the rest. Which means that instead of doing the nesting, we could just start another else if statement. And now just make the test for below 18. So let's delete this. And now just end with an else statement. So how is this going to work? Well, if this is true, then JavaScript is just going to stop here. It's not going to test the rest of the code. But if this is not true, it means that the person is not a member and the person is not above 65 years old. In this case, we just need to test if the person is below 18. Because in this case, if the person is below 18, it means that the person is below 18 and also the person is not a member. Because if the person was a member, we would have stopped here. If we are still testing this condition, it means that the person is not a member, and now we know that the person is below 18, so we can just print this. Otherwise, we know that we are talking about a non-member above 18. So this is just another way of writing this. But be a bit careful, because if we had our conditionals written in a different order, we could have a few problems with this. So by using the nested conditionals, our code was actually a bit safer. So let's just hit Ctrl Z to go back to that. And now we can be sure that this is going to work. So I just wanted to say this, because when we are solving problems, there's never just one way of solving problems. There's always multiple ways, so I just showed you two different ways of doing it. So now let's just quickly talk about nested loops. So when we deal with multidimensional arrays and objects, it is fairly common to use nested loops. So here I'm just going to show you an example. So we have an array of employees. So each employee is an object, and inside each employee we have the children of the employee, which is a list, because the employee can have no children, 2 children, 5 children, so we need an array for this. So how could we print the names of all the children of all the employees? We are going to need 2 loops. So the first loop is going to run through each of the employees, and then inside this loop we need to start another one to run through each of the children. So let's do this now. I'm just going to copy this variable, and then after doing this, we are going to print all the employees' children inside this list. So let me select this element. I have this UL element with an ID of children, and then I'm going to print all the names inside here. So let's go back to Visual Studio Code. I'm just going to comment all this. So here's the employees variable. Now you need to pay close attention, because when we deal with nested loops, things can get a bit complicated. So let's do this step by step as always. So now the first thing we are going to do is start a loop to run through all the employees. So we know we can do this by starting a variable to be the counter. Then the condition is going to be that A is less than employees dot length, and the code to be executed at the end of each iteration is going to be incrementing A. Alright, so now that we are inside each employee, so at every iteration of the loop, the list of children is going to be employees with an index of A dot children, because that's the name of the property. So we can create a variable to store this at every iteration. So var children list or something like this, or let me just use camel case. All right, so var children list. Then we just got the list. Now what do we need to do with this list? Just start another loop to run through each of the children. So here we start another loop. And this time we're going to have to pick a different variable name. In the next lesson, I'm going to talk about why we can have problems with nested loops if we use the same variable name. For now, let's just pick another one. So it can be b. So b equals 0. Think of this as a separated loop from this first one. Just forget all the rest. Just think that inside here we have an array, which could be this one, for example, and we are just starting a loop to run through these elements. So the condition is going to be that b is less than children list dot length, and now we just need to increment b. All right, so inside here, let's create another variable for child. So at every iteration of this loop, we are going to have one child, and the child is going to be children list with an index of b. So again, doing this step by step so we don't get confused. So now I know that at every iteration of this loop, I'm getting this child. Before we move ahead and do anything, so I encourage you to do this every time. Send it to the console just so you can see if this is working. So console.log. Let's send the child to the console and see if this is working. So saving this, refreshing the page, let's go to the console, and now this seems to be working. So here we have the names of all the children, which is pretty good. But this is not what we needed to do. We just needed to send all the children to this HTML element. So selecting this element, we can see that the ID is children. So at every iteration of the loop, instead of doing console.log, we're just going to do document.get element by ID. .inner HTML, and now we're just going to increment the HTML, which we know with strings, we're just going to do concatenation. So plus equal. Then we can just send a list item. So this is just basic HTML. Here we are going to close the list item, and in the middle we are just going to send the name of the child. So now we can erase this. If we do this, let's go back there. Let's refresh the page. We can see that now we are able to print the names of all the children. Now we still have this inside this element. How can we erase this without having to go into the HTML file? Well, this is pretty simple to do. Here where we are incrementing the inner HTML of the element, what we need to do is just, before starting all that, we can just set the inner HTML for an empty string. So now when we start a loop, we are just going to start fresh with this element. Refreshing the page. Now we can see that we only have the children. So I hope this wasn't too complicated. If you need, just go back, watch this video again, and if you have any questions, you can always post in the Q&A section. So that was all for this lesson. I'll see you in the next video.